Welcome everyone, JR here, and today I want to talk about natural law. First, before getting into definitions regarding what a law is, I want to explain something. Before any idea was put forth into action, it was first conceived of within the mind. Therefore, as the principle of mentalism states, all is mind, because everything begins within the mind as a thought before becoming an action in the real world. That being said, I will elaborate more on this later in the video, when I speak more about what a law of the universe is exactly, and how they are integrally and inexorably connected to principles. Now, moving on to what a law is specifically. Laws are based on principles which are unwavering. Natural law is the universal, binding, and immutable conditions which govern the consequences of behavior for beings who are able to understand the difference between right and wrong, and who have the capacity for holistic intelligence. In other words, natural law is natural, meaning non-man-made, inherent, having a basis in reality, nature and truth, and is ubiquitous and omnipresent in the universe as a set of rules of laws that exist as conditions which are binding and immutable, meaning that they cannot be changed. They act as arbiters of actions. Everything begins within the mind, and this is evident based on the first principle of mentalism, which states that all is mind and that everything begins with conscious ideas before manifesting into physical realities. Knowledge is the accumulation of information that can then be acted upon. Gaining knowledge usually leads to an understanding, which then leads to wisdom, which can then become utilized knowledge and understanding put forth into action through behavior. Wisdom in the form of overall human behavior in the aggregate then dictates the physical manifested reality that emerges as a result of cause and effect, and the choices made therein by individuals acting in the capacity of either right or wrong behavior through the beginning building blocks of knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Thus, the cause and effect of human behavior sparks the universe's or nature's processes to begin the categorizations of those chosen acts and behaviors from the aggregate human population and enacts an appropriate response in terms of consequence for those chosen acts. Whether an action is right or wrong determines the severity of the repercussions or consequences, or lack thereof, if it is a right in terms of its effect on another sentient being. To define right and wrong, it is necessary to come to the conclusion, through apophatic inquiry, of what it is that makes an action good or bad, true or untrue, and moral or immoral. Apophasis is the denial of an intention to speak of something which nonetheless is hinted at, according to the online etymology dictionary. The beginning of the word apophasis starts with apo, which forms the prefix from Greek meaning off, away from, and is combined with the Greek word phanai, which means to speak. When placed together, these two words mean to speak off or to say no to, as in to define what something is by stating that which it certainly is not. Definition by negating all options until the only choice left is that which can be used to define the term. This is also known as negative theory or negative inquiry. Using this process of apophatic inquiry, it can be determined what right and wrong mean and can be defined as: a wrong is that which causes harm to another sentient being, morally speaking. Acting in such a way as to transgress against another form of life with senses is appropriately punished through cause and effect by natural law, depending on the extent of the harm caused. There is a time lapse in terms of when punishment for such wrongdoings is conducted, so it is not immediate in that if one were to perform a wrongdoing on another sentient being, that the individual performing that wrong action would instantly and suddenly be bombarded with an equal action of harm done to them. Instead, over time, a wrongdoing is punished through circumstance and, as some would call, bad luck and misfortune. In the past, this has been described by some as karma, or what goes around comes around. Some examples of wrongdoings are theft of personal belongings, which causes a sentient being to be without the items that they own, property or things that were taken; raping another individual, which is stealing their choice to be intimate and have sexual contact with another human being, thus stealing their sense of security to be left unharmed and unmolested, is one other example of a wrongful action or wrongdoing. Trespassing on another sentient being's home or dwelling, which is a theft of their right to be left alone and to feel secure in their own domain, is one such example of a wrongdoing that causes harm in one way or another to another sentient being. And as a last example, taking the life of another sentient being is the theft of a life that does not belong to the individual or party performing the act of murder, which is an outright, unprovoked, wrongful action toward another life form, distinctly and clearly differentiating itself from killing in general, which can be done in self-defense without repercussions due to natural law. Notice that all wrongful actions can be boiled down to simple theft of one thing or another. Being wrong is also synonymously used to describe an action which is untrue or incorrect. A right is, therefore, any action which does not cause harm to another sentient being. Any beings defending themselves against attacks are able to act in such a regard without the consequences of transgressing natural law, because when an individual violates another individual through a means of violence, the person attacking has forfeited their right to be left unharmed under natural law by attempting to violate the right of someone else wishing to be unharmed. The word violate is in the word violence for this reason. The Latin verb violere means to treat with violence, outrage, or dishonor, which is the root word for the term violence as well as violate. Simply put, the golden rule applies here, and is aptly succinct to describe the relation of wrongdoings in that one should not do to others which one does not want to be done to them, and one should act in a manner towards others that one does want to be done to them. Examples would be treating someone kindly because of the desire to be treated kindly in return. Adversely, one should not mistreat another individual so as not to be mistreated themselves. Being right is also synonymously used to describe an action which is true or correct. Laws of the universe are non-negotiable and are always in effect, regardless of time or circumstances, and are constantly and concurrently impactful on the lives of beings within the realm or dimension. The law of thermodynamics states that certain actions are forbidden and not possible to escape the consequences of when it comes to temperatures and actions, such as holding a bare hand over a fire or heat source and expecting not to get burned or injured by it. Gravity and its effects on the planets is one other example of a law which causes inanimate objects to be bound by the force and causes them not to be able to escape. Any attempt to escape from the law will be met with the harsh consequence of doing so, such as jumping off of a cliff with nothing to hold an individual up, resulting in severe injury or death, if not met with a state of capability to float in midair, glide through the air safely to the ground, or simply fly like a bird. Another example of a law would be the condition of having wet clothes or fabric and expecting them to dry without a heat source or air circulating around them, causing them to become dry over time. These laws are in effect so that beings may learn from them and avoid transgressing the aforementioned laws so as to prevent the often very negative consequences of having done so. Atoms, which comprise the matter within the physical universe and which combine into molecular structures, are governed by laws which cause them to act in a specific manner, such as electrons orbiting around a nucleus. Natural law is the same in the sense that it governs the actions of sentient beings and dictates the congruency of those actions with morality as a whole. Right, unharmful, correct, just, or lawful actions are deemed by the universe as allowed and are therefore not punished or considered transgressions against natural law, and are met with peaceful and prosperous consequences from having performed such an action. Wrong, harmful, incorrect, unjust, or unlawful actions are considered to be transgressions of natural law, and are therefore subject to punishment and negative consequences. Much more information regarding this exceedingly important law can be found in the book entitled The Kybalion, which is alleged to be written by the person or persons undertaking the pseudonym of the three initiates, and who are said to be the inheritors of the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus. Another great book regarding this subject is by Jeremy Locke, and is called The End of All Evil. A third book regarding this topic, which I myself have not read in its entirety, but plan on fully reading sometime soon, is Natural Law in the Spiritual World by Henry Drummond. The individual I'm most familiar with regarding natural law, and who has taught me the most particularly, is a man named Mark Passio. His website can be found at whatonearthishappening.com, which I will leave a link for in the description. Passio has a podcast which I highly recommend and suggest listening to from the beginning at podcast number 1 and continuing onward until the latest one at podcast number 206. I have followed his work from his podcast in the beginning to the latest one of 206, which aired this past Sunday on April the 14th, 2019, as well as I have watched almost all of his interviews over the past decade and have watched nearly every single one of his seminars, presentations, and videos currently available. Everything I've learned from him and have heard him espouse is worth looking into, and at the very least, considering for further study. I have not come across a single subject that he brought up which was not based in truth, or which was uninteresting or uninformative. If it sounds like I'm giving too much praise where it may be undue, I urge you to look into the subjects I've discussed here, and the many others which Passio and others refer to, and to come to a separate conclusion without bias or emotional triggering due to confirmation bias based on previously held beliefs or attitudes regarding deeply held past positions of understanding. There are only two ways to learn, after all. One is to learn that which you did not know to begin with and were therefore nescient of. The second is to find out that you were wrong or ignorant of the knowledge, and to then learn what is right, true, and correct. I've also personally met Mark down in Acapulco, Mexico, where I attended a conference called Anarchapulco that he was speaking and presenting at in February of 2019. I watched his main stage presentation and attended his workshop tailored specifically towards individuals who wanted to take part in over 8 hours of continuous learning in a presentation format of Passio's choosing via PowerPoint. I can attest that the man is every bit as knowledgeable, vehement with truth-telling, and eager to inform as he seems in his videos, lectures, seminars, and podcasts. I cannot speak any more highly of an individual whom I have learned from in the past, which is quite significant considering the sheer eclectic myriad of individuals I've learned from in my life. I actually have a lengthy and growing list, which is by no means exhaustive or all-inclusive, of many individuals that have taught me various lessons or introduced new concepts to me, that is growing so large that it expands several pages and numbers individuals in the hundreds with no signs of slowing down or stopping anytime soon. I make it a point to learn from a large variety of individuals and to honor the wise thoughts of Aristotle, which are as follows. Quote, "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." End quote. And as Passio would add, quote, "without rejecting it either." Quote. Thank you all for your time.